Welcome. This is the Property Preservation Insider Show, where we discuss all things about the property preservation industry. Last week, we spoke about vacant homes and what it takes to secure those properties, and some great stories about contractor theft. This week, we're going to dive into your wallet and try to understand what's happening with today's prices. Why aren't you making more money? And where exactly is the money going? Now, let me turn it over to two industry pros who know the ins and outs of the business. Brian, where are we starting today?
Let's talk about the headlines, the news in the marketplace. We all have heard so many times about this massive collapse that's supposed to be generating, and I believe the stories too. Um, Today's industry, as we've discussed on previous shows, is in a desperate need of a price readjustment. Now, we are starting to see those price readjustments in the Southeast, Midwest, and Northeast right now. And again, we all can jump on Zillow and check out some of those pricings. $10,000 drop here. In fact, actually, one property that we worked on was sold at a sheriff's sale. It was purchased for $99,000 or $97,000. They did a really reasonable flip job to it. They're trying to sell it for $399,000, and that was in December of 25. And here it is in June. They are all the way down to $325,000. So the market is really kicking back to saying that these prices are no longer affordable, and they're just really getting out of control. Now, what does that mean? Because this is very critical, because this is one of those things that helped the collapse back in 2010, if I do believe, where people bought those houses at that prime market price at the top of the curve, and then realizing 2 years later, 3 years later, that their house had lost $150,000, $200,000 worth of equity. So they're like, why are we living here? We can go buy a brand new home, 2 miles up the road. It has all the bells and whistles and features and all the lovely things that we want in a home. Plus, it's 1,000 square foot bigger than the one we're at right now. Why don't we just move? We'll try to sell this. And next thing you know, they can't sell it, and it goes back in. It goes into the foreclosure process. That's one of the biggest concerns of the current administration. And Trump actually was on a news conference and mentioned this, where with the new chair coming in for the Federal Reserve, they really need to start dropping the interest rates. But on the same point, he doesn't want to drop them so fast, so hard that he creates a rush onto the marketplace, causing a price collapse, or potentially too getting back into the price wars, and the prices go up. So they are being very critical of the steps that they do and what's happening, as, shall we say, it naturally resets itself in the marketplace. So those are going to be some critical things to keep an eye on. Number one, the home sales. Number one, the home listings, the refinance rates, or the refinance mortgage applications, how many are being put in, how many people are trying to refinance their houses. One of the key things, there are several real estate gurus, that really talk about the Airbnb market. These are places that people were purchasing back, a few years ago when interest rates were extremely low. A lot of people were traveling around. So these people buy these glamorous houses, fix them up, turn them into Airbnbs, rent them out. Nowadays, not so many people have a lot of disposable income. Right now, pricing values, people aren't going out. People are not spending as much money because they don't have that much money. So the collapse of the Airbnb market was some of the triggering points. Another thing to keep a very, very, very close eye on as things progress. With foreclosures are always going to be there. Foreclosures always will be there. The 4 Ds that drive our industry are death, disease, divorce, disaster. So with all of those in place, things always happen. The industry is going to go. But the question is the industry going to spike out? Is the industry going to push out into a collapsing style or a readjustment market? And what is going to be coming up in the next few months with the administration, with everything that's going on? I mean, gas prices are killing people. We've noticed some relief, but again, is that a temporary thing? Is that going to drive higher? Those are some of the key critical points, because again, people have less money to spend on other items. Are they just giving up on certain properties? Are they finding something cheaper because they have to? And again, a lot of states, they're losing mass companies. They're losing large companies, large employment companies. They're moving to other states. How is that going to affect the housing market in your local area too? So again, please, if you're seeing stuff going on in your market and in the areas that you service, please reach out to us. Give us the boots on the ground info, because we're the only ones that you can trust nowadays. News market is far from. They did come up with some federal cuts that they're going to be doing into the system. They have they just cut another $10 million to preservation programs. HUD did. These programs are like beautification projects that they were getting grant money from and money from to do certain things to the outsides of the properties to help the beautification process. HUD is a very interesting thing where it is all government based. Sure, it's all government run. Of course, there's a lot of bureaucrats involved, and there's a huge disconnect between us, the boots on the ground, the people getting things done, the people that have to spend $4.50 for a gallon of gas, and we watch the prices of our materials, our locks, lock boxes. Everything is going up 40-50%. But why isn't our price points reflecting of today's real marketing, where prices continue to drive smaller contractors out of business, or again, things just aren't being done to the properties that they should be doing, because again, no one's giving the bid approvals because everything is so high. But the good news is that HUD has done some revamping to their price sheet, so everyone hang on. Mary's going to give us the lowdown here of all the wonderful adjustments.
There hasn't been too much, and there's nothing significant when it comes to this. So trying to find the actual HUD price sheet can be a little tricky. I found two different versions of it. One is the Appendix 7, which is supposed to come straight out of the handbook. And then the other one I have is the maximum allowables for preservation, inspections, and just general repairs, general inspection, securing, and preservation. So some of the items that have gone up, they are raising the prices on inspections. I think that went up maybe $15 per inspection. And then each additional unit went up around $10. I did not see any significant, and it honestly depends on which price sheet you are looking at. The Appendix 7 that says that they revised it back in November, grass cuts haven't really changed much. I believe there was maybe a $5 increase on the Appendix 7. Now, if you go to the maximum property preservation allowables, there was actually quite an increase on the grass recuts. So I'm not really sure which one they're going to be using and which one of these is actually the correct price sheet. Because if you go to it depends on which site you go to. I do know one of the larger nationals uses the Appendix 7 straight out of the handbook, and not much has changed. I do know that like toilet cleanings, refrigerator cleanings, and freezer cleanings used to be $50. Those have gone up to $75. Your handrails have gone up per linear foot. So make sure that you are checking for your price sheets, and make sure that if you're doing your bidding or if you have processors, make sure they have your updated sheets, so that way you are getting the money that you deserve for the work that you are performing.
We talked about that for a quick second, a processing team and writing those bids out. We're going to touch base a little bit more deeper into the show. One thing you always need to do is when you are doing your cost estimations, your CEs, pay attention to which CE you or your other client or your processing team is using, because there is huge price differences
Yes.
between the three that are allowed by HUD. Now, you and I both know, we all know that the nationals are going to use telling you how much it's worth, the cheapest one possible. But again, they are going to be bidding off of the highest one that HUD allows. So that way, again, they can bridge the gap and make more money.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk about that for a few seconds on which pricing system should we be using here in the field and contractors to maximize our money.
So I've spoke with our processors, and our processors have been in the business for about 10 to 15 years. They are actually one of the best processing teams, that we've had thus far, and we've used quite a few. They work off of repair base, and I know there's Xactimate, and I still cannot remember what the third one is. But from their experience and the numerous amount of clients that they work with, they stick with repair base, and they swear by repair base. They will not use any other CE software.
So that's one critical thing as you are trying to maximize the profits in the field. Make sure you're arming yourself with the proper tools to get paid. Because again, if you are using a different type of software and it's not giving you the proper allowable base, or even not even recognized in the industry, you could be selling yourself short. We had a job recently where we sent in a CE to the national client. The national client said that we were ridiculous and overpriced. This is what their we sent a bid in with a price, and they came back and like, wow, your price is absurd. How dare you even think about making money? How dare you? Who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what our CE said. And of course, they used the cheapest one possible, or maybe they're just guessing. But anyway, at the end of the day, we countered back with the proper CE, and they submitted the bid, no questions asked. So the problem, again, with the industry is there are too many multi-billion-dollar industry-style companies that are trying to maximize the profits and literally paying the person in the field pennies on the dollar. Perfect case in point. Let's get into it. There are several national vendors out there. There are national companies out there that service these. These companies obtain contracts through banks direct and also through the HUD M&M contract base. And they, or the different acronym FHA, VA, HUD, there are so many of them out there that underwrite loans underneath federal government. They bid these contracts, they get these contracts that are worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Remember, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we work in. And if you don't believe it, look at the HUD budgets, look at the VA budgets when pertaining directly to foreclosure base and loan servicing. Look at those numbers. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. In fact, actually, one of the nationals about 5 years ago, Bank of America, 7 years ago, Bank of America was hunting for a national provider. This national provider paid Bank of America $500 million, paid them $500 million just to have the rights to their contract. So if that gives you an idea of how much those contracts are worth, think about it. But again, they want you to do $1 million job on a $5 budget. And why? Where's that money going? I've been in this industry a very long time, and some of the older veterans know that when you worked for nationals back in the day, you would easily take your M&M sheet, your price sheet, 25%, that's what they were paying, period. You know it, we know it, we all know it. But today, because of, again, people continually accepting the lower prices, people, you have the offshore regionals and the other companies just driving the pricing down. And also you have every worthless person in the world ending up in this industry. And I don't know why. We have seen so many stories of, in fact, actually, one particular one, which we talked about last week, the contractor showed up in a Cadillac Escalade to trim trees. I'm glad he could afford a Cadillac Escalade, but where's your pole saw fit there, buddy boy? But ultimately, again, how do you haul waste? How do you do yard cuts? But it gets into that this person, again, damaged the neighbor's property, and ended up just throwing everything into the dumpster of the neighbors. There is no professionalism in there, and there's no professionalism. There is no standard set forth, but this national company sends them out because they're cheap. And how is that affecting our neighborhoods? How is that affecting our industry? Because again, if they can find someone to do it for $10, they're going to try to find someone to do it for $9. And that as a whole of our industry is what is bringing it down. Everyone here can sit here and complain about the price points of our industry. Every single person here can. But when you do complain about them, but then you pick up the phone, or when that company calls, when that regional calls, when that national calls, it's like, hey, can you go do this for $100? And you're thinking, well, $100, great, but that job is actually worth $2,000. You know what I mean? And that's where we need to, as an industry, say no. This is what I want. This is what we need. And if we all kind of stood up and said no, it has to change. And that's one of the key critical things, because so many companies are going out of business. So many companies are being affected and being hurt by this. These are just working families. And that's one of the larger problems, where the larger US-based regional companies are no longer in existence. I know of a handful of them that actually are not processing overseas out of Bangladesh and India. So us as an industry, boots on the ground, we need to take the power back and say, no, national, you don't need to go build another $42 million facility. You don't need another jet. How about you pay up right? So words to think about. But as we get into it again, where is all the money going? Let's talk about grass prices for a minute. Now, we do have several national clients. We do have a few regional clients that we service, And what's really sad is that the regional, who is an American-based regional, ends up paying us more than some of the national companies do. What's wrong with that picture? Why? Because that regional is actually underneath a different contract. He's been in the business for so long, he's underneath the old price sheets, not the new price sheets. In fact, actually one of the largest, don't really want to say the name, but yeah, one of the largest nationals out there just upped their percentage from 25 to 30%. And on top of that, the grass cut pricing that they pay is ridiculous in consideration to. Example, Mary, what is the new price point for a simple 10,000 square foot grass cut?
So depending on which price sheet you go by, so let me go and look here for the Appendix 7, which is supposed to come straight out of the handbook. For Pennsylvania, a recut for 1 to 10,000 is supposed to be $90. So 1 to 10,000 square foot, $90.
So who out there is getting paid anywhere near that for a 10,000 square foot cut? How many of you out there would love to get paid 90? Let me get my calculator out here. Hang on. So 90 times 0.75. Who would love to make $67 on a 10,000 square foot grass cut? Last time I checked, what is it, $32 on average for nationals?
Depends. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 32.
Let's just give the benefit of doubt to everybody. And let's just say it's $35. So when you take $35 divided by $90, that's 39%. Where's the rest of the money going? And this happens every 2 weeks. So so the national provider is literally keeping. Let's do my handy dandy math again. It's slow. My coffee hasn't kicked in, so bear with me. So the national is literally keeping $55 out of that grass cut and maybe paying you $35. Isn't that a little wrong? I mean, you're the person running around in that $90,000 truck with the $5,000 trailer with the $8,000 lawnmower. as our prices increase, again, feeding that thing $4 gallon gas, $4.50 gas. And again, we've seen gas spikes through all kinds of presidencies. Currently, right now, of course, gas is up because of the Iran issues going on there, and there's a lot of speculation on supply and demand. So, of course, gas pricing is up. But at the end of the day, what gives the national client that kind of power to accept that kind of money? And that's one of those things why it's killing the industry in a whole is where's that money going? And that's just a simple grass cut. Winterizations, you have your debris count. I mean, again, that's a simple one. Debris is $50 a yard. You should be getting paid $37.50. The nationals pay $30. Regionals pay anywhere from 25 to actually 22, 25, 27.
It depends on the regional.
And some also depends on the regional too. We've been told that they pay $15 a cubic yard. $15 a cubic yard doesn't pay to hook my trailers up.
Nope.
But again, labor's gone up, insurance is going up, fuel's going up, my tires have gone up, my trailer's going up. So where and why? And that's one serious question, because we always see in the news markets, in the publications, the president of this national company says, as soon as we can figure it out, we will pass the money along. Wait a minute, you got to raise your price. I can't. You got to sit here and make more money, but I can't. What's wrong with that picture? Why do you feel entitled to keep all of the money? Why? I was just at a job site yesterday, and lo and behold, there was 4 people on an email that needed the information updates on this job. It was 4 o'clock, 4:15. I called all 4 of those phone numbers. Did I get any kind of response and support? Not a thing. We get yelled at when it's not done right and forced to go back under a chargeback notice, or we will just reassign the property to the next person there who's going to do it a horrible job. But how can you sit there and demand standards when you're paying peanuts on the price? And again, this is where, as a field service contractor, you need to look and say, no, this is what I want. And until we all stand up and say that as a unified group, nothing's ever going to change. Next week, they'll drop the grass price, they'll drop the prices by another 2%. And they'll slowly eat away at you. So again, where's the money going? I know one national company has 4 buildings, very nice buildings, very, very, very nice skyscraper buildings. They house a whole bunch of people in those buildings, a bunch of people that I can't get a hold of. When we send an email to, when they want something done within 48 hours, you send emails trying to get information. Next week, they'll respond to you. This is what we're paying for? Because you are paying for it. And it is one of those games that the smaller based contractors, too small to fight Goliath. But if everybody said no, then it makes them listen, because they need the work done just as fast. But as long as we keep taking the cheapest price possible just because it's work, that's when you're going to fail. And that's where, again, there's too many fingers in the pot when you talk about those national clients. Now, on the flip side of the coin, where do you get the work from if you're not getting it from the MCSs, the Safeguard, the Cyprexes, the NFNs? Where do you get it from? We'll talk more about that on later shows in your marketing aspects and where to get the work from, because there are so many different divisions and so many different things you can get work in this industry from, in like-minded industry and like style things, I should say. And again, it needs to be done, but it continually gets into that our costs continue to go up. And it is one of those things where 15 years ago you could do a grass cut and make more money than if you did the same grass cut today. It's not about inflation. It's not about cost. It's not, literally, you are paid less money. And why? Who created that standard, and why is it there? So that's where it gets into. They want the high quality for literally the cheapest price possible. When people keep saying yes, they're going to keep taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. And that's just one of those things that it infuriates me, where we go there, we perform tasks and duties, and the neighbors come over and they're like, so grateful that we were able to do these things, and what a great job we're doing. But then they'll send someone else in, and next thing you know, the house is robbed. Next thing you know, the copper's missing. We've had properties where the neighbors got broken into. So it's like, why does the industry keep sending these people in when you have honest, hardworking people trying to make a living, but they're literally just getting taken advantage of because someone's always going to do it cheaper? And where are you going to find the work from? So that's some critical points in the industry that, I hope and think that this show that we're dealing with is supply and demand causes pricing to go down. Too many people cutting grass. It gets into that there is more into this industry, and there are enough properties in this industry to stay very, very, very busy. We service about 5,000 to 6,000 houses per year in our local area. Yes, there is always a point of competition where you are going to have an oversaturation in certain markets. The problem is that the nationals, in a sense, are taking more money than they did 15 years ago. That's the biggest point that I'm trying to drive. It's not the fact that there might be 7 contractors in the area. Again, there are different resources you can do to make more money in the industry beyond working for the MCSs, beyond working for the Cyprexes, the Safeguards, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also one of those things that the nationals, when they find a contractor that will do it for $20, they'll keep giving it to them for $20. And next thing you know, that's the price points they will say. So yes, some oversaturation, sure. But if there's 50 contractors in the area, why does that affect the price of a national? Because again, it used to be HUD minus 25. And I see, you can tell the old school people that know that, but that's what it used to be. So why did the price change? Did it change because there's more contractors? No, because you could have 100 contractors in a city, but if they're all getting paid $20 from a national, it's regardless of how many people are there. So that's one thing to think about too, is why does the national, why did they change the agreement? Why did they change the game? Because again, they take 25% out of your bid points. They take 25% out of certain items. But another wonderful thing too, if you think about it, if you go in and you price out to cut down a tree, okay, and you get a bid from a contractor, from a landscaper, from a tree arborist, and let's say, for example, he wants $5,000 to cut down that tree. You bid, the same price, but your bid gets rejected because, the CE didn't state it. But if Bob, the tree guy, wants $5,000, it's sure no problem. We'll just cough that right up. No big deal. Why is that always the difference too? How come when we have certain properties where we require a plumber to come in to do a winterization, we've had some very complex properties, and we hire a plumber to come in, and they're more than happy to just shell it out for whatever a plumber charges, but we couldn't even touch those rates. We would never get approved. We're always outside of standard costs. Those are other things where it doesn't make any sense. The same job is being done, but you're willing to pay someone who's not in the industry 4 times what you're willing to pay us who are inside of the industry. Some points there to think about too. But we did have a note about grass cuts. So let's talk about grass cuts, because it is grass cut season. Grass cuts are done pretty much twice a month. Some areas are more, some areas, but they're always about twice a month. Some areas are year round, some areas require different time frames, so on and so forth. Some end in April to November, and some are pretty much year round. But with your grass cuts, pictures, 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 and more pictures. HUD has a standardization for their photographs and what they require, but pretty much you should be taking about 16 before photographs. You should be taking 4 measurements, pictures of the grass height in different areas. You should be doing about 6 actions, 2 lawnmowers, 2 weed whackers, 2 leaf blowers, and then you want to take the very same grass cut photographs, the 16 afters in the same locations. And this is critical because the more pictures you take, the less problems you have, as always, because that is our industry and we all know it. But we utilize grass cuts as a tool to get to the property. Yes, grass cuts pay crappy prices. They do. But while you're at the property, what can we find? Mary, what are kind of a few examples of the stuff that we look at our grass cut properties?
When we go to our grass cut properties, because that gets you on the property. When you are working on a grass cut, you cannot enter the house itself. So some of the biggest things that you want to look at to bid for when you are doing grass cuts, you want to look for your vines. You want to look for your shrubs. You want to look for your trees. You want to look for anything on the outside that you can be bidding, debris, anything. You can also have your gutters, your downspouts, anything, broken windows. Like the grass cut can bring you in, and there are so many things that you can find just simply off of cutting the grass.
And that's the critical thing, maximizing time at the property. As you're riding around, cutting the grass, listening to music on your headphones or news or whatever, look at your property. Look at the downspouts. Look at the roof. Look at any missing shingles, broken windows. Mm-hmm. Look for your lockbox. Make sure that's in place. Has the house been broken into?
Check your outbuildings.
Your outbuildings, padlocks, hasp, anything you can do. What are we going to do at that property? Now, again, we've covered in past shows. Again, you have certain things where you have bid after the fact items. And I do say from years of experience, make sure you know your client, make sure you are going to get paid before you waste your time doing things, and make sure you know what those allowables are.
Yes.
Certain companies will give you an allowable every time you go to the property for this, that, so on and so forth. Make sure you know. I was actually on the phone with a contractor last week, and he was talking about how he wants to just go into the property and, grab everything he possibly can and then just leave. Not too many companies do that anymore.
No.
There are certain ones that basically go in, they give this laundry list of things to do, but it's drying up like that, where most of the times it is your REO agents, your real estate agents, when they have control of the property, they will go through and they want all of this stuff done. They already have all the approvals because they're working directly with the client. The nationals, again, it's one of those things, tread lightly. That's all I have to say, tread lightly. But again, while you're there, what's your trees looking like? We love tree trimmings. We love shrub trimmings. They're great. We love gutter extensions and hose caps. Is there a broken window? Quick, easy money that we can bid for, but also you're doing your job. If you go to a grass cut to cut grass, you're doing it wrong. We go to grass cuts looking for stuff, plain and simple. What can we find? Sometimes the neighbors stop by. We pick their brains and talk to them about the property, kind of anything going on with it, seeing if there's any other vendors going to the property, see if there's any other people going into there that are running that area also, kind of let you know about your competition, And again, there's nothing wrong with good, clean competition. It creates a level and standard inside of the industry. We love it, because again, at the end of the day, it gives us the opportunity to show our capabilities, our style, our way that we conduct ourselves, opposed to the contractor. There really shouldn't be a contractor in this business. I'll leave it like that. We all know. We've all seen the funny little Facebook posts of the stairs put upside down. We've all seen the repair jobs. I think the funniest one I saw, jump off topic, I don't know what company this was. It was just a funny little post, but literally a preservation contractor went into a property and someone had replaced the shower surround. No big deal, right? They used shingles. I don't understand it. But literally, yes, they put drywall and they use shingles for the shower surround. So it does have a 30-year warranty. But oh my goodness, I hope you don't slip in the shower, because that's gonna hurt real bad if you hit any of that. But again, the biggest thing is that, when we go to these properties, our job is to protect and preserve those properties. We want to make sure we're hitting everything we possibly can that we can make money on, bid those items, measure those items, create a clean bid for the client, so that way it can go up, up, up and get approved, and then you're making money. So possibly by the next round of grass cuts, you might pick up an extra $100 shrub trimming, which makes it even worth more. That's the key critical thing. We go to properties with the expectation of finding stuff wrong. And again, if you cannot go to a home, and I don't care if it's a brand new built house, and you can't find $500 worth of work or $1,000 worth of work, you're not looking in the right spots. And those are key critical things that, you need to realize that it would take them a very long time to cut down that huge 40-foot tree, but they'll do the shrubs very quickly. They'll do the hose caps very quickly. They'll give you money to go reglaze the windows. They'll give you money to put on those gutter extensions, to put up the handrails. Those are faster, easier approvals that they can push out, opposed to a $40,000 new roof or a repaving of the driveway or replacing the garage door. They never want to replace garage doors. But that's where it gets into, is that turning those observations into bids, clearly photographed from multiple angles to prove. Remember, when you go to a home of any kind, you are telling a story. That's the best way I've been able to train people. You are telling the story of the house through your photographs. They always say a photograph is worth 1,000 words. Now, I could write a Library of Congress with all the pictures that we've taken. But tell the story of the house. What's wrong with it? What's going on? You are the eyes, the ears, the nose of that agency, of that national. You are what they need at that property to explain. The basement is musty. The basement is damp. Let's put in some damp reds. The shrubbery is growing too close. We need to deal with it. The neighbor is complaining about this. The neighbor is complaining about that. These things always help to generate. And again, if you have those neighbors that stop by, want to make sure everything is kosher, let them know. Hey, you see the number on the door? You have any problems or issues, please give them a holler. Oh yeah, the shrub line is bugging you. Call this company. Be polite. Be the squeaky wheel. I always tell neighbors, be the squeaky wheel for legitimate items, of course. And this way, it helps bring these bid approvals back to us. Whenever you go into a home, one of the biggest things that seems to get us is your cubic yardage when you do debris counts in a property. So if you don't know, Google how to calculate a cubic yard. It's length times width times height divided by 27. That's 27 cubic feet in a cubic yard. So when you go into a property, what I always tell people is think of like a washing machine. Visualize that washing machine. That's kind of a cubic yard. That's close enough. So if you piled everything up into a corner, how many washing machines would it be? You always look at a couch or a chair. You know what I mean? The rule of thumb is like every cushion is a yard when you throw it in the trailers and everything else. The Nationals want you to break all that stuff up and condense things. And no. In all of our bids, it's very clear. It's unprepped, uncompressed volume. Same thing for leaves and things like that. But that's one of the biggest things is when you go through these properties and you are going into the property, take a whiteboard, write it down, take a picture of it, put tape on the wall, blue tape, whatever. Mark the walls, mark the room size so you have reference going back. They're coming out and we're experimenting with the new LiDAR technology, where you're able to literally hold cameras and just map a room quickly and efficiently, and it calculates room size and everything else. There are several apps that they use out there for these things, things that we're experimenting with. But anything to make us faster, better, and more appropriate, or more accurate, I should say, and coming up with the appropriate bids for the necessary work. Basically, you have the small stuff. If you focus directly on trash out volume and that's all you're going to want out of that property, you're never going to get the $500 worth of gutter cleaning. You're not going to get the $250 worth of gutter extensions. You're not going to get the $100 worth of hose caps. You're not going to get the 2 yards worth of food. You're not going to get the refrigerator cleaning, the freezer cleanings. You're not going to get any of that stuff. You're leaving money on the table. And in today's economy, with everything, and again, with the horrible price points that we have sometimes on certain regular items, we need to maximize our time. We need to maximize the efficiency at every property that we have. And again, your back office support, your back office teams, that's very critical for them to make sure that we are processing things properly. So Mary, I'll let you kind of talk about that for a little bit with the bidding team and some of the back office stuff and dealing with maximizing our profitabilities at our properties.
So one of the biggest ways to maximize profitability is make sure your contractors or you are taking photos. The more photos you have, the better. Another huge tool that helps with this is writing your notes and your orders. Like Brian said earlier, putting your tape on the wall, writing your information down on a whiteboard, having great communication with your processors is the best way to make sure that you are putting in the bids and submitting your bids. When you go, especially for your initial secures is your first time on the property, in the house. Your initial secures, you should have hundreds of photos. You should be checking every nook, every cranny, every floor, closet, attic, outbuilding, anything and everything that you can possibly find, and make sure that you are taking photos, and put in your notes. Make sure your processors know that when you're pointing at the side of the house, you're either pointing at a bee's nest or you're pointing at the gutters or whatever it may be. Photos and notes are huge when it comes to bid writing.
Again, most amount of information coming in. We have a note coming in from Josh. What about those 3D cameras? Have you ever thought implementing those in those bids or jobs? Yes, that's one of those things that we talked about with the LiDAR technology, those 3D camera based, where the property will scan itself. There are time limitations you got to think about in some of those areas. And like I say, that's some things that we are experimenting using technology to make us more efficient. Instead of writing down things on a piece of tape, can we set a camera in a property and it scans? It can come up with some debris count. It could come up with different things. I know there's a lot of technology out there, especially with AI being generated too. So as technology goes, can we utilize those things to make us more efficient and better in the process? So that's a very good point. And as we experiment and come up with these things, if you guys are working with different products or different things you want to share, please, by all means, mention it, bring it forth, so that way we can share it with the group, we can share it with everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat floating down the river. At the end of the day, you know, someone watching this could be my next door neighbor, a mile up the street, and we're servicing the same houses, and congratulations, I'm glad to meet you. But at the end of the day, I as a company, and Mary as a company, and you watching as a company, you will never get every foreclosure home in your territory. It's not going to happen.
No.
You could work with all the clients you think of, but there's always that one that's got a half a dozen houses in that county or that area that you service. So yes, there's good, healthy competition. And we do highlight a lot of the bad contractors because, number one, I don't want the liability on me. And number two, I want to make sure we try to get them educated or remove them from the business, especially people that think these houses are is their own private shopping center. Um, but in a group as a whole, we are all in the same boat. So the more information, that's one of the bigger inspirations too of doing this podcast, of doing this, is to share the information that we have, working inside of the industry for a very long time and trying to help and inspire local contractors, maybe starting and getting into this industry. I know we complain a lot, but trust me, I've made tons of money in this industry. It's a very fun industry. It is nothing like it in the world. There are some problems, sure, but there's problems with everything in life. We are trying to expose some of those things, like the pricing matrices, like how much the nationals take and some of their procedures, and trying to make the industry better as a whole. But as a group, we need to work together in a sense to make the industry better, but then also make our neighborhoods better. Because I drive through those neighborhoods to the ice cream store, to the restaurants, and it is always funny. It's like, yeah, I worked on that house. Yeah, we worked on that house. So we're able to beautify our neighborhoods instead of having that horrible, disgusting piece of property sitting out there that's attracting the rats, the mice, the vagrancies, and everything else. It's our job to help our neighbors. And as I always say, I only get paid by the nationals, but I work for my neighbors. Take that into heart when you do your jobs, when you do your work, that the guy that lives across the street just spent $500,000 to buy that house, and now he's got to wake up and look at this mess. The grandma next door has to deal with mice and rats now coming from our house in the fields, because no one's cutting the grass. Our job is to protect and preserve these properties, to protect and preserve our neighborhoods, to protect and preserve the assets of the banks, and make a lot of money at it. So as we develop new technology, as we find new technologies, we share. If you guys have those cool little tricks of the trade that you found out over the years, please send us a note. Please send us the emails. Join in the conversations, and that's how we're all going to make this industry better as a whole. And it's a daunting task. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong, but we will take it bit by bit, day by day, to make it better and to get it better. And I hope that as you're developing and learning things and you're hearing things, and hey, if we disagree, let's talk. Let's have a conversation about these things. Again, old dogs always learn new tricks from time to time. But getting back to it all, this industry as a whole will be around forever. The industry as a whole needs to have better standards, needs to have better pricing, and the industry as a whole is also very, 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 very complex, because you have government agencies, and we all know how that works out. Then you have different contracting companies, and it breaks all the way down into your local resources, your local code enforcement officers, and there are so many moving wheels into this whole thing. It makes it very complex. But again, at the end of the day, we are there for the person next door. We are there for the little old lady next door that doesn't know what happened, but man, that grass is 4 foot tall and she's already lost 2 dogs and a cat in there. So those are the ones that we need to help. Those are the ones we need to look out for. And again, like I say, it's one of those industries that I couldn't see not doing. It is so interesting to be able to help so many people out, to make a buck in the process, and to take that piece of property that for whatever reason was discarded and turn it into something, and eventually someone's going to buy it, someone's going to flip it, someone's going to do their thing and turn it into a home again. That's what we want. That's what we need as an industry in a whole. And the other point too is, if you think about it, the housing market and everything ties into everything in the U.S. economy, ties into your housing market, whether it be the lumber, the plastics, the rubber industry, the appliance industry, the flooring industry. Everything touches the housing market, and that's why it's so important that the work is done properly and the things are done properly, where we are able to make that impact. And once again, it, it has its cycles up and down, up and down. So does the preservation industry also. If there's hopefully not a major collapse like we had, the industry in a whole will spike. There's going to be some price adjustments here, so the industry is going to spike. There's tons of housing being built all over the country. So again, that's going to create issues with our industry as a whole. And what are the outturns of that when it comes into that pricing point? People walk away from their homes. That's kind of what we see that's going to be happening shortly. Again, hopefully, we'll see what happens. But again, well, the biggest thing is, Josh mentioned another point. How would someone get started in this industry? Well, first, it's about training. First, it is about information, knowing what you're getting into, because if you go into this blindly, this industry can chew you up very quickly. The industry as a whole has set forth where you can make an immense amount of money and you can do great things, but then also if you do one thing wrong, you could lose $40,000, $50,000 in a chargeback. I have seen it happen. So the biggest thing is keep tuning in. We are coming up with a wonderful training matrix, a wonderful training program where we are going to be kind of going step by step through our training matrix to give someone the information from day one to getting your first job. Where do you get the jobs from? How do you deal with, your insurances? Who do you go through? How do you develop relationships with different clients, different companies? What kind of tooling do you need? What kind of trucks do you need? What kind of lawnmower should you buy? What should you be more specific in? So the industry as a whole, as we've been talking over the past several weeks, is so, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so many options.
It's very diverse.
Yeah, very diverse. Thank you. Where you could literally, if you do your job right, you can sit in an office and manage a workflow. By meaning you could become a regional client. By all means, you could sit here and send work out to the other side of the country, with great contractors. Or again, you could be boots on the ground in your local area, making those changes directly. Again, it depends on what you want to do as a whole. If you are a grass cutting company, a landscaping company, you're trying to pick up some more work in an area, you could literally go to an area, go to a county and start picking up foreclosure properties, being a contractor, and you could build your other business for residential customers. You can build that up. If you're a plumber, you want to start opening up territories and start doing things with repairs and doing winterizations and things like that, you can do that. If you're a carpenter, you can do different things as far as the rehab process. If you're a roofer, you can do tarpings and repairs. If you are a junk hauling business or debris hauling business, you can get into that. In fact, actually, that's how I got into the business many years ago. A very dear friend of mine, one of my mentors when I was a young lad, he actually started a junk removal business in Virginia. I thought, hey, that's a great idea. I can do that. You pick stuff up, put stuff down, and then you realize, hey, there's a lot of people doing this, and it's difficult. You got to pay for advertising. You have all these things that you have to do to get that work, to build that base. And then I found out banks need this work being done. So then I kind of got hooked into a company, and the rest is history, where literally went into figure out how to start removing junk and then ending up as a full service preservation company. So, it's been an interesting ride, but that's how I got started in this. Basically a truck and a trailer, and there you go. And many years down the road, I've learned a lot of stuff. I listened to people that have been in the industry. I was mentored by several of the business people and developed my own procedures on what I feel the industry needs as a whole. And met some really great people, found some really great partners to work with, found some great nationals, and I found some horrible nationals that I got rid of. So, and getting into that too, we all see the postings, what about this company, what about this company, what about this company. Some people love this national, some people love that national, some people hate that national, some people hate this national. So sometimes you kind of have to take the good with the bad and read the reviews of every company that you want to work for. But this is a huge industry. Like I say, we service about 4,500 to 5,000 houses a year. Keeps us busy. Now, granted, let's not talk about the Great Preservation Collapse of 26. That's what I'm tagging it as, when HUD decided to deal with all of its fraud and get rid of everybody. But yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful industry. I mean, Mary's been in the industry for how long?
I've been in the industry for 4 to 5 years, owner of my own company going on 2.
So 6 years ago, did you even know this thing existed?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever think about it? Like, oh, look, there's a horrible property with stickers everywhere and 4-foot tall grass. Did you?
Nope. It is something that, when you're driving down the road, it's not even, you're used to seeing it every day, that it never even crossed my mind. Well, like, what happens to these homes? Who takes care of them? It was never something
thought.
I really even thought about.
Mm-hmm. But here it is. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I always tell people this. This is kind of funny. So it was 2019. It was prior to COVID really hitting. It was after all the crashes and the markets stabilized. So this was not in 2012 when you'd open the newspaper. I know, what are newspapers? And just see sheriff sale after sheriff sale after sheriff sale when the collapse was going on. This is 2019. Foreclosure properties in the United States, HUD paid close to $2.5 billion to cut grass in the United States in 2019. That's just cutting grass. That's not the inspections. That's not the roof jobs. That's not the mold jobs. That's not the tree trimmings. That's just cutting grass. So again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There is enough work for everybody around, sure. And if you know how to navigate and you get the information up front, you can learn from someone else's mistakes. You can learn quicker through someone else's process of taking 5 years to figure something out, because it happens like that sometimes. But you learn, and that's one of the, like I say, that's one of the key things of this, is to inspire, to train, to teach. Again, we have talked about how to start your business all the way up to the initial secures. Now we're kind of talking about some grass cuts, and we're going to continue on talking about each point and procedure. The biggest thing is cover your butt, pictures, 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 and more pictures. And when you think you have enough, take a few more. And third, nothing there belongs to you. Stop taking stuff. And number 4, I think we're at 4. And number 4, it's a business, it's a job, but you're also making an impact. I cannot tell you how many times we've gone to that property on the initial secure, and it is just wretched. It is horrible. It is disgusting. Grass is horrible. Trees everywhere, so on and so forth. But we whittle that away slowly, but slowly and slowly. Just keep continuing writing the proper bids, taking the proper photographs. And we've taken these houses that are literally the eyesore of the neighborhood, and we don't flip them, but we make them look normal again. We're able to take those properties through the hard work and dedication of the teams and make it better and make it more appealing and make it so the neighbors, don't have to cringe every time they got to go outside and they got to look at that thing, or, next thing you know, they got snakes and snakes in their grass and rats and mice and everything else, or that smell. Oh my, the smell of the houses. But we're able to make that change in personal lives. And that's one of the major reasons why I continue to do this business. It's fun. It's interesting. It makes a ton of money. And I get to do good for society. I get to make a change. I'm still learning tips for inspections. Inspections are one of those things that if you are doing the preliminary 2-week inspections, we don't do a lot of inspections just because we are more the full service. Now we do inspections, we do bids, we do things like that. But when you're getting into the basic inspections, the key thing is your lighting. Make sure you got good lighting. And also make sure you're taking adequate photographs. Us as a preservation contractor, we are searching for bids. You are updating the system. You are updating the clients, keeping things going. But more importantly, as you go into these properties, keep track. Look at what's going on. Is the copper missing? Is there food in the refrigerator? Always open the refrigerator on your way out the door. Pro tip. Always open the refrigerator when you're leaving, not when you first walk in. Trust me on that one.
The smell lingers.
Yes, it lingers and sticks forever. Oh, we have too many horror stories. We can talk about that. But anyway, when you do your inspections, again, you're the eyes and ears. So make the recommendations necessary. And please, I implore all of the friends out there, all of our inspectors out there in the business, grinding away with the rest of us. If you just don't want to go into the property, just don't go. Please. If you don't want to step foot in there, just tell them to reassign and leave. Don't ever go back. Don't tell them you can't get in because now I got to go fix it. And it's just, I'm busy. I cannot tell you how many times the property is not secured properly. Well, shut the window, please. But again, keep an eye on your properties and stuff. Keep an eye on the developments, and that's one of the critical things where taking notes at those properties, etc., is a big deal. As inspectors, take pictures of your high-end items, your TVs, things like that. Always keep an eye on those things because those are always the things that end up going missing, either from someone being in the home. And again, keep an eye out for the biggest thing I am concerned about sometimes when I go into properties, especially ones I haven't been into, is what's in the house. Always announce yourself a million times. I've seen so many. I see so many people just walk into these properties like it's nothing, just because they were there last week, not realizing that on the backside of the property, someone just broke in, and that person's living in the basement. You know what I mean? So again, always go in with inspections. Flashlights. Make sure you announce yourself. Make sure you also have your key ring. Check your locks too. Make sure you're pointing out those things, the deficiencies of other contractors. Keep an eye on some of the other, once again, shrubs, trees, things like that. Updating the client on those issues. And make sure, again, your stuff is organized. And I do recommend with all inspectors that you literally, again, tape up a room. What we mean by that is get the blue tape out, living room, dining room, blah, blah, blah. So at least your pictures are organized when you're getting back home and updating. And also with inspectors, I know a couple different companies, they do like 3,500 inspections a month. Good Lord, God bless them. That's a lot of houses if you know what you know. That's a lot of properties. But they just run around there and get them done. We have another note. Contractors complained and bad work is a huge issue. Very much so. I do love the bad work because I just charge them more to fix it. So thank you. But what bothers me so much is that you have those contractors that don't do any kind of research. Again, you have the contractors that are scoping properties out. And I know 2 companies I actually helped put out of business because that's what they were doing. They were not doing anything but literally robbing the houses, So again, nothing is yours. But, the other thing, it gets back into the earlier part of the show. If it's cheap, say no, walk away. You know what I mean? And eventually we're going to get the bad contractors out of the area. Now, as I always say, there's a difference between cutting a few little corners and just doing it wrong. You know, when you're doing a winterization, do it right. Do it right. Now, you don't need to pour 2.5 gallons of antifreeze in every toilet. Sure. Okay, I'll give you that. But drain the water heater. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone in there. In fact, actually, we're dealing with one property right now where the contractor did not do a hot water baseboard heat. Well, it has radiators, but the hot water heat system didn't do it properly. Cracked every radiator in the place. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to fix that. Like, I don't. My back cannot handle that. Please. 2 stories too. Great. But no, in all seriousness, like you say, do your job right. And if you don't know, Google, study, learn, reach out to us, join a training matrix, do something better. But more importantly, do the job thinking you're working for the neighbors. And if you hustle, you move, you know how to make money, you can make tons of money in this industry. I know companies that make $40-50 million a year doing this stuff. There's money in this industry. And again, if you become a valuable resource to your nationals, they will love you. They will give you everything they can. Trust me. But you have to be that asset to them. And they will hand you work. Just they'll flow it to you. You know, I mean, currently, I think we have 120 jobs on our board right now that we're pushing through, you know, and of course, everything was due tomorrow. Yeah. But again, you know, the national companies, they know what quality work is because they see it. And if you ever want a funny story, you talk to your national client and see if they'll send you some photographs, because I have seen stuff and I've heard those stories that just like, and you got paid for that? Seriously? And they did. They made a lot of money, you know, but it gets into we as a whole, boots on the ground. I'm talking to you guys out there. I'm talking to you guys that in 10 minutes after the show's over with, you're going to be loading up your truck, putting your boots on and going out and knocking down grass cuts because next week's going to be raining all day. I'm talking to you guys out there that have to be in the 90-degree weather on top of a roof because you got to tarp it or clean the gutters. I'm talking to you guys and ladies. Do better. Say no. Prove your worth. Just because a company's offering it doesn't make it so. Funny story. We need you out there today. No. Oh, thank you. No problem. Tomorrow. When can you be out there? Wednesday. Oh, yeah, we need this done now. Okay. Next day. Can you be out there Tuesday? No. Okay, I guess Wednesday will work. You know, we can't do it for that money. Well, how much do you need? X. Oh, we can never pay that. Have a good day. Next day, can you do it for $50 less? Sure, no problem. I'll do that for you. They feel they got something. I was actually charging $300 more than I should. But I mean, you understand the point is that if you say no, they're going to go fish, they're going to go hunt. They're going to go look around for the latest and greatest. And then when they send a contractor out, and you might think to yourself, wait a minute, if they send these horrible people out, eventually they'll know. And that's unfortunately not the case either, because we had a particular house we mentioned on the program. They sent a company in. They were literally robbing this house, and the neighbors were taking pictures. They called the cops. They did all this stuff. And that company the national contacted me and said, do you use so-and-so? We're like, no, we don't use so-and-so because they steal from houses. They rob houses. They're too much of a liability. Okay, good. We're cutting them off. And then 2 months later, you know, where was that other property? That other property was way up north.
I can't remember.
Okay. So, but yeah, there was a property that was probably 4 hours away from this home base. And they started developing work up there with new vendor managers, and they were just doing the same thing. So the national company didn't cut them. This person stopped giving them work, but this person still gave it to them. These are the things we need to change in our industry, you know? And that's, like I say, that's the whole point of this, is to help the contractors out there. Maybe I can share some tips. Maybe we can give some information. Maybe you can learn a few things. And at the end of the day, maybe we can learn some new things too. But as a whole, as a group, let's change our industry. Let's make it what it was. I mean, back in the day, yeah, money was a lot better. jobs were a lot easier. And we were still able to make that impact that we were supposed to. So, but that's in a whole. That's what we need to do. We need to change our industry. We need to learn more, do a better job, stop being so cheap, and don't be afraid to say no. Because trust me, we're a dying breed, and I mean that literally. The preservation industry is truly suffering because so many people were burned from previous points. They just got out of the industry in a hole. They went back to doing home remodeling and home construction. You know, I was talking with a contractor earlier about grass cuts for one of the nationals. And they said, well, you know, if you do this area, we'll give you the 300 grass cuts we have in this area, but you got to do them for $25. Whether it's an acre cut, whether it's a quarter acre cut, 5,000 square feet, or a 50 square foot yard, it's $25. How many people do they have to go through to be that foolish to do an acre cut for $25? And what kind of quality are they going to get for $25? That's the biggest thing that needs to be known. You get what you pay for. Nationals are going to be cheap. They're going to get cheap work, you know? So food for thought. But like I say, we have a lot more stuff coming up in future episodes, a lot more information, and we are hopefully going to be rolling out our in-depth training matrix and our community-based very shortly. So please stay tuned for that. That's going to be some very interesting things. We're going to give you the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs, where to order from. We're going to teach you how to pick a lock, what tools to use. We're going to teach you how to enter a home. We're going to teach you how to do a winterization properly, inspections, roof tarping. We're going to teach you all the little things, the ins and outs, and everything in between. So stay tuned for that, because that is our focus for this year, to get that rolled out. So,
Yeah, I think we're cut it off right there. Very interesting show today. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us. And if you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. And if you have a story of your own, leave it in the comments. Or if you want to vent about the industry, join our Facebook group. Check out our website at propertypresinsiders.com, where we have notes, clips, links to all our socials. And be sure to join us next week, where we talk more about the property preservation business. We'll see you then.
thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow us and share it with your friends. Got questions? Go to our website, propertypresinsiders.com, and join our Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you.